And I'm looking at the view of this, and a number of people have their cameras off. I just want to beg people that we need to get each other's energy. So as many of you as possible, could you please turn on your cameras and try to keep the cameras on. We'll have some biological breaks and so on, but we really need to see each other in order in this virtual space to feed on each other's energy. Thank you very much, Roxanne, for that introduction. And my background is in communications. I've spent the last 100 years of my life, because I am almost 100,
No, she's
in
not.
communications and in corporate communications. I see two lovely faces that two people have a little bias, two people who I love very much. One happens to be a guy, one happens to be a woman. Fitzroy and Vanilla, lovely, lovely to see your faces. Absolutely lovely. I met Vanilla via TED Talks, and Fitzroy started off as being my son's friend, but he's now my friend. All right, I just want to say a little bit about how I ended up on gender-based violence. And I'm proud to say that I received my first pre-action protocol letter from a company because I had taken up the issue of gender-based violence. The chairman had been accused of sexual harassment of 2 employees, and the company continued to have him as the chairman. Unfortunately, 50% of the shares in that company was held, currently it continues to be held by the government of Trinidad and Tobago. So in picking up the issue, I in fact picked a fight with the government, but it wasn't a direct fight. It was, Anyway, eventually we got that chairman to resign. And I'll tell you what I did to get him to resign. I sent him a letter saying that if your daughter Googled your name right now, the first 10 things that will come up will be associating you with gender-based violence. I'm sure that is not what you want. He never responded to that part of the letter, but very soon after, he resigned. And he didn't tell me that is why, but I'm taking responsibility for that and saying that, sometimes you have to find other ways to encourage people to do what is right. And gender-based violence is a big issue in the Caribbean. We have all kind of historical reasons why it is such a painful and such a big issue. But I contextualize gender-based violence in terms of violence, that we are violent societies, and gender-based violence is just one aspect of it. It's a critical aspect of it. I'll tell you what I did and why they actually sent me the pre-action protocol letter. I researched all of the international distributors of their product, and I wrote a letter to each one telling those companies that by continuing to support this company, they were in fact endorsing gender-based violence. And anytime you impact people's commercial issues, they respond. So that's when I got the pre-action protocol letter. I was confused. I almost cried because I saw myself losing my house, losing everything in my life. But then I got a friend to give me some advice pro bono about how I should deal with it. So that's my story. Any quick questions? All right, I'm not seeing any. We can use the icon if we wanted to ask a question, or just jump in and ask a question, because it's a reasonable size group. It's not too large. All right, no questions. Well, the first thing I want to do is a little survey, because I want us to have this starting. What is it do we want? What do we expect? What are we going to do? So Roxanne, are we ready to do the survey? And that survey you're going to do privately, and then I'll get it, so I'll be able to do some analysis of it. And we're doing a pre-survey and a post-survey.
Sure.
So while Roxanne is getting you to do the survey, I just want to remind you that you got some pre-work, right? And the pre-work was to identify what you see as violence versus gender-based violence. So when we come back, we're going to go into a session in which we are going to be in breakout rooms, And in each room, we will have some interaction around that. So we can start the survey now?
Yes, they're seeing it, and some people have started to respond already. It's just 3 questions. It's just 3 questions. Hmm, 21 persons have responded so far. We just need 2 or 3 others. Good. Thank you so much, everyone. Denise, are you seeing?
Hi, are you able to hear me?
Yes,
we're
we hear
hearing
you,
you.
Oh, cool. I'm just saying that I had to like approximate an answer to the last question because there weren't expansive enough options. Cheers.
Okay. Which one did you put? Film?
Animation, but
Film, animation. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay. Okay.
Good. We can close off, Denise?
Yes, you can close off the
Are you seeing the results?
no, I'm not seeing the results. I'll deal with the results.
No problem.
When they go
Okay,
through.
ending poll.
Yeah, end the poll, right. Okay. And I have a history of reframing things. If you tell me there's your objective, I reframe it to an objective that I think makes sense. So having looked at the brief, here's my... Are we seeing my screen share?
One thing.
Yes.
But I saw on this paper you put on the screen. But I wanna select 2, but I can't. Why? It's I'm supposed to select 1. True.
Yes, just 1. Just to give us
Just
a kind
one.
of a. We're just trying to, you know, for Ms. Deming's session. She just wants to kind of have an idea of who's in the room. So that's okay.
Yeah.
That's
Also,
okay.
I couldn't find my medium.
What would you
What
would you want to see there?
Probably craft.
Craft, okay, no problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Reginald, what medium would you want to see there?
I use the towers in web preparation and painting.
Say that one more time.
Like it mixed media.
Mixed media. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sonia, you said you wanted to have books in
yeah,
there.
I would have selected writing also, like if it was like text or literary art or something.
Design.
I would have gone with that.
Fashion.
Design.
Yeah, or printmaking. I guess I sometimes put myself in that box too. But I figured hand making books as opposed to sculpture.
Okay. Christopher.
and for mine,
Christopher, what would you have liked to see there?
Mix to the box for me, because I use several fonts. Mixed media.
Mixed media. Okay, no problem. Thanks a lot, guys.
and I believe that digital media, just as a blanket term, might have been close.
Okay, thanks a lot, guys. All right, we're going to jump back into the session. Thank you so much.
One question. Can I ask people to mute, please? I'm hearing background noises. If we could have, just hear Ms. Deming clearly. Thank you.
So Roxanne?
Yes, over to you.
Yeah, we can continue. All right. I don't know why the polls are still dominating my screen. Anybody could help me with that?
Yeah.
All right, it's gone. Okay, and okay. Right. I was saying that in my own personal style is if you give me an objective, I am going to redefine, I'm going to reframe the objective. And I think it's a useful tool. It's a useful thing to do, to always reframe whatever it is we're trying to do. And in this case, I'm saying that the objective of this session and of this project really is to help all of us. And when I talk about all of us, I mean us and the communities that we bring behind us, because we never present alone. We present as one, representing a whole generation, the whole number of people behind us, or we are that representation of a whole history. So it's to help us design, and to me, the design is absolutely, that's critical, communicate and reflect our stories in our voices. And for me, this is extremely important for our artists, that there's a need for our voices to be heard, and to be heard in the tone and the tenor and the culture that we reflect. So then I have challenges with how sometimes artists reflect our Caribbeanness, but in a different kind of genre. It's a new one. Sometimes it is dominated by one particular island as opposed to another. Sometimes it is dominated by US issues. And for example, if we just look at gender-based violence, the Me Too movement got a lot of traction in the US, but the Me Too movement, for instance, in Trinidad, did not get a lot of traction. I'm not sure about the rest of the region, if they really got a lot of traction. So we didn't get a lot of women coming out and saying Me Too. And there are all kinds of reasons for it. I feel that the very size and the very lack of democracy that exists in our country is responsible for some of the muting of our voices and some of our responses. So to me, this is the objective. It is to help us design, communicate, and reflect our stories in our voice. Is there any feedback on that?
I have just to agree with you, but also I feel as though in the Caribbean, because our populations are much smaller, and especially in the Bahamas, it's a lot more political. I feel as though because someone always knows somebody who knows somebody, I feel as though that's the reason why you don't get a lot of response from the Me Too movement.
And just a question, do you think it's only with the Me Too movement, or do you think that that happens in general?
That happens in general. Even with our homework assignment, I tried to pull violence or illustration of violence in the Bahamas, but when I thought about it, I was like, the video sessions are recorded, and I don't want to jeopardize my career or my stance, with it getting out and then me being reprimanded because of whatever I may feel. So I don't think it's just the Me Too movement.
Okay.
I'm going to chime in and I agree with Aaliyah from the Bahamian standpoint, if that's okay. I can't, I'm in an awkward position. I can't use the chat with how I'm sitting, but I just wanted to say yes, and also especially in the art community, there's a few things, incidences, and a lot of us women artists confide in each other and talk about it, but we don't feel like it can go beyond that, or maybe we're not all ready. So yeah, I'm gonna agree, and I'm recorded and I don't care.
Thank you, Arnaldo, sorry. You can unmute and.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I think my contribution is just, I think the threat of reprisal is very real. I think in part because the communities can be as small as they are in the Caribbean. And so that's part of the silencing, but I think there's also, I think it's a number of things, but there's also this culture of, don't rock the boat, and a lack of support for people when they come forward as well. So I think there's both, I think it's a combination of that, reprisals that can come from either the individuals responsible for the violence or the institutions that are complicit in it. as well as, again, just like this general lack of support that can come about from, previous traumas, including from like other women. Even though the issue isn't rooted solely around women, can expand to other gender expressions. But yeah, around women that just like, well, I went through worse. Why are you opening your mouth?
All right, just thank you very much for that contribution. Can all of us just have a look at our mute buttons? And if we're not actually talking, oh, Analo, it was you. I'm kidding. I was just trying to get rid of some background noise, but now it seems to have disappeared. So thank you very much. I saw somebody else before. I saw Christopher, but Christopher, what's your comment?
Oh, I want to speak on let's see, the shut upness that exists within the system, where you're actually, for example, I had a lecturer who, when you're writing plays, you cannot put anything about death and religion and anything in it, and you had to write what he wanted. So your expression, your voice was stifled. So we felt stifled as a class, having to write what the lecturer wanted, when we were actually reflecting. Even in Jamaica, I'm talking about reflecting what's happening in society. They didn't want to see any blood or anything, but the students, that's what we were seeing. And now it has evolved that when you're in a society where your voice is taken away, you do not feel as though you are part of the system. And so students walk out feeling that they didn't accomplish anything. Back here in Grenada now, it's just like I've been using the arts as a means of therapy, helping persons. And the organizations who come to me for help when the traditional approach fails would come back and say, no, you can't do this anymore because it is too powerful. So you have to shut up, sit down, you are excluded, alienated because of the power of what you do. But if you do not accept to channel it their way, you are marginalized, pushed aside, you name it. And that is why I say, if you don't stand for your voice, then you'll be speaking for other persons. Me not do it.
All right, Christopher, there are two things I'm taking away from that. One of it is me not do it, which tells me that you are going to speak in a voice that is authentic. And the other thing I'm taking away from that is the shut upness. It's a whole new descriptor for me, but it's a wonderful descriptor. All right, can I just take one more comment on this? Alana? Alana, you still want to comment?
Oh, yeah, sure. I guess I basically agree with what everybody else has said, but I think besides the smallness of the society and then the absolute, the fact that there will be repercussions, I think people even, sometimes even if everybody knows that somebody is known for certain behavior and so on, especially if in the professional community, I feel like the consequences for that person, they may not exist, and also the person's status within the professional community is still seems to be sometimes just of more value than whatever reputation they would have. So it was interesting when you mentioned this notion of your scenario where this person may have come up in the Google search according to their behavior, but at the same time, in the Google search, I feel like that person, not necessarily that person, but whatever that person's professional accolades would still be just more relevant, be more lasting, be more valuable to the society. That seems to be the case very often in Barbados, especially if you're in a very highly esteemed professional position. It just doesn't seem to matter.
Okay. So thank you very much for that. So this is my reframing. So I hope that a number of you will reframe whatever the issues that we're dealing with, reframe it in a way that will speak to the authenticity of our voices. This is just some things that visual arts, the role it plays in facilitating community engagement and in developing creative solutions to some of our problems. And to me, I've used the visual arts, but it's not just the visual arts in general, and how we engage people in a creative way in particular. There's some things that we need to keep on our radar. We need to keep on our radar violence, gender-based violence, statelessness, and seclusion, because seclusion is now a big issue in the region, particularly with COVID, where a lot of us are now confined to your island of origin or where you're a resident at the moment. And there's a seclusion that impacts your whole being. So these are some things we need to look at in creating whatever we create, whatever medium we use, however we create it, and so on. All right, I want us to just go into I just want to go into the breakout rooms for a minute. And there's some rules around the breakout rooms. You need to appoint someone as a speaker on your behalf, the behalf of that room, because I want us to consider the homework that you've got, violence versus gender-based violence, and have a conversation around that, and then come back and do each room will have a representative to do a short presentation on what was the feeling of their room. Any questions on that?
Moya, and Tukula, Vanel as well.
Okay. All right. Good. Thank you. Okay. So some comments that came up during our discussion. John mentioned that for him it was all violence, right? He understood this sort of specific nature of gender-based violence, but he saw everything as violence. Myself, I was saying that when I did a Google search of gender-based violence versus violence, I felt for gender-based violence, the images coming up were curated images, I guess speaking to the private aspect and maybe taboo aspect of gender-based violence versus violence on the whole, more captured real images of violence were showing up. Julissa was talking to her people's inability to engage and stop this sense of violence, and about how painful and being in fear of sort of living your own life in your home, in your country is because of the upticks we're having in gender-based violence. Moya was mentioning just violence on the whole, how violent we are in a society, how we beat kids, how kids are beating kids, male students beating female students, where we are with regard to homosexuality and how violent we are against homosexuals. So just a very violent time and mindset, whatever we're living in. And Tukula mentioned how it seems like we're objectifying victims of violence and we want to be spectators of that of violence rather than people who engage to try to stop, mitigate, or help victims of violence. So I think that's what we spoke of.
Okay, thank you very much. Next one, that was 5, so 4.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So we things that came up in the in our discussion was thinking about how one of our participants, especially Vanessa, she does work as in a victim support group. So for her to like go looking for, and I think a lot of us, especially women in the workshop, to go looking for an incident of gender-based violence, we don't really have to go looking far. But she also brought up, like, to her, the silence around men speaking up about gender-based violence from their experiences, which I feel like all gender-based violence comes from this root of like toxic masculinity and the idea that we can't speak up about what happens to us due to fear of shame. And then sort of the language too around talking about violent acts. So ascribing, when we hear someone has inflicted violence upon someone else, usually it's referred to as wickedness or something, like almost like a supernatural outside force causing someone to do something, instead of understanding that it's like an internal cause of like a mental illness or a rage, or right, like, or some sort of like systemic understanding of gender power that we have grown up with and internalized. And then towards the end, I think there was a desire to talk about solutions, but we didn't have time to, we sort of ran out of time at that point, but those are the things that came up. Anyone else from that feel okay? Folks from room 4, let me know if you wanted to add something. Oh, something that I actually wanted to just say, I felt like everyone had a story about an ex who, someone who chopped up their ex with a machete, because I didn't share mine in the chat. But when I thought about, like, if I was going to go outside of my own experience, I also was like, yes, that time in 2010. But it actually happens more often. It was just, I worked at the newspaper at that time when this terrible story broke. And the woman's pictures were shared. This was before WhatsApp. But they were shared around, like, almost like a warning, like, don't cheat or else this is going to happen to you. But I was like, oh, everyone in this group has someone killing someone else due to a machete story, with a machete. Just as an aside.
That machete story pervades the entire region, eh? Thank you very much. Room 3.
I think I was room 3. So we jumped right in, and actually most of the examples came from music, lyrics from music. So we already saw that there's a reinforcement, the media kind of plays a heavy role into that. And then we started talking about real world for us seeing and experiencing it, and people saying how for the workforce, a lot of people are sexualized for position or to get ahead, and how money plays a big role then in the violence that then goes on. How people are emotionally damaged and mentally damaged from these things as well. We also brought up that it is one thing for the physical abuse, it's easy to see that, but then the mental and emotional abuse is harder to then spot that because there's no physical scar now that you can point out, you know, what exactly is happening to somebody behind then closed doors. And then at the end, well, in between there, we kind of talked about how the gender-based violence seemed more like a one-way street, where, because when we jumped into it and there were all men in my group, we went straight to how females are victims of violence, but then the opposite end of men who are victim of violence usually goes untouched because I guess social norms or whatever. Men aren't likely then to come forward and say certain things. So that was what we kind of talked about.
Okay, that's interesting. And I really love the fact that you talked about the male response rate, or the way men experience gender-based violence, and do they experience gender-based violence? So, you know, there's a story of a set of women in India, and I don't know how to describe them. I don't know, I'll just simply say a group of women who would go with sticks. In the Caribbean, we know them as bois, a big piece of wood, and they would put a good licking on men who engaged in gender-based violence. So I don't know if we could look forward now to to the reverse. But that's just me wandering off. Sorry about that. Let's move on to group 2.
I was group 2. So I took a few notes of what we discussed, and something that kept coming up was a lack of respect that leads to violence in general, just a lack of respect for other people, their space, their boundaries, that causes violence, and how a lot of violence and the mentality that leads to violence starts in the home. So like the home and like your intimate relationship with your family can be like the incubator for like violence that you then take out into the world and inflict on other people. from things you learned or saw at home, and how because it's at home, then it's something that you likely won't talk about because like it's a personal issue. So then it's not discussed as the cause for something you may do later. And an inability to communicate like frustration, especially because a lot of violence is perpetrated by men and then onto women or onto other men. Then an inability to communicate like your feelings is then expressed through like frustration is expressed through that violence, and just like a dysfunctional dynamic becomes like a cycle. And we also mentioned how not all violence needs to be physical, like it could also be like mental or psychological. And like you don't physically need to hit someone, but you could like deny them access to like things they need or something else, and that could still be considered violence. And it's not as, like someone else said, it's not as easy to spot or talk about because there's no scars. And then we also discuss how generally like a male dominated society, so there's a lot of issues of control, and when people feel like they're losing control or taking control, and how that is expressed through violence. Those are mainly what I wrote down.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's move to group 1.
Hi. So I'm Arnaldo from group 1, which consisted of Alana, Christopher, Aaliyah, and David. And we spent, I think, most of that time kind of leading with these questions, really trying to define gender-based violence and how, and its specificity from just a brighter conversation about violence. And so a lot of that was providing examples. Aaliyah provided some specific examples, Christopher and myself, and then we had, I think we had like a conversation where it was really just framed, I think, primarily along like heterosexual experiences and those types of like male-female experiences of violence, but a lot of it was providing different types of examples of gender-based violence, and in an essence trying to frame it out, as I've heard previous room members from other rooms discuss, beyond physical violence. So how, emotional abuse, financial abuse, and those forms of violence can show up for both men and women. And I'll just add as well non-binary folk.
What was that last thing you said?
Non-binary folk.
Non-binary codes, okay. Right, was that it?
Yeah, I just summarized because it didn't deviate much from what anyone in the previous room said, unless anyone in my group wants to add in something specific.
Okay. Anybody wants to add any comments to this? All right, so some key themes in this are that we need to make the distinction between violence versus gender-based violence. We operate in a violent society, and there are historical antecedents for that. There are people who are involved in supporting victims. But one of the things that didn't come out explicitly, and I think we ought to find some way to identify it or to focus on it, is the non-binary relationships or non-binary constructs that are becoming popular throughout the world, and indeed in the region, where we've had a region in which we've been very, very homophobic. And as we change, as the world changes and relationships change, then we have an opportunity now to kind of soften some of the violent responses to these different approaches to people coming together, and it's not necessarily a binary yes or no relationship, heterosexual relationship. It could be a range of relationships. Any comments on that?
So that actually sparked something in me that happened last week. So I have a best friend. He's a part of the LGBTQ community, and he was basically abused for that. His family was putting him through conversion therapy, and it was horrible. And most of our friendship sparked because of this, and most of our friendship was just me trying to shelter him from all of that going on, because it did take a toll on him mentally. And he left our country, which is Ghana, and went to live in London, which is where he was born. And the same thing basically happened again. And this time I felt horrible and helpless, because like I was like this mother figure to him here, and I can't do anything about it now. And I'm like trying to get him to understand that all of this, none of this is his fault, because he's thinking, oh, maybe it's his fault because his own sibling beat him up, like, and it wasn't even one of those playful, punches or anything, like cornered him and beat him up, and then he got blamed for it by his parents. And I'm just there like so confused. Like, I have no idea what to do. So I don't know.
It is an issue that I think artists have an opportunity to soften the hard edges around it. And I'm not being judgmental. I'm simply saying that we need to create spaces for different approaches and different voices. And artists have an opportunity to create those spaces for the emergence of those different voices. Comments?
I am so loving this, yeah. I'm trying not to put on my camera because I'm using data. If that's okay.
Okay.
So you could see who's speaking. Okay, it's
okay.
Right. What I'm sensing, because this is so much in my area of work, that I'm loving it so much, because as she just mentioned about that friend and that connection. There's a couple I was helping just 2 months ago, where the young lady fell in love with the guy because she was sorry for him. And then he started to blame his parents, how his mother abused him so much when he was a child. And now he's turning around the cycle. She helped him so much that he's now abusing her. And she feels that she shouldn't get out because she's trapped. She loves him. And she thinks that she's going to help him one day to stop the abuse. And it has been 6 years going of constant abuse. And so, but she doesn't think that she's being abused. So this puts you in a kind of a situation where you feel so guilty and so pitiful, and so much empathy and sympathy comes out that you lose yourself. So it's a dangerous path when the gender-based violence kicks in. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. All right. Are there any other comments you wish to make on this? If there are no other comments, I want us to take a biological break just for 5 minutes, and I'm putting a clock on the 5 minutes. And while you're doing that biological break, I want you to think of a word that, because we want to do a word cloud when we come back, and that word must encapsulate all the thoughts or whatever is important to you right now based on the last hour that we've been together. I want a word so that we can do a word cloud that can give us a sense of where are we all in our heads. Comments? All right, so we break for 5 minutes. It means we're back. It's now 11:04 from me. So we come back at 11:10. Back in the room at 11:10. Thank you. I'm seeing some very thoughtful faces on the screens. Comments? Feedback?
Yeah, I could say something that I think when the last gentleman, I don't remember his name, he talked about the aspect of not knowing you're a victim of gender-based violence. And then I could see that here in my country. I'm from Belize, and we have several different, ethnic groups. And there's for some of them, like it's part of their tradition. And like, for instance, we have the indigenous, the Maya people that are down south, and some of them are not necessarily accustomed to what we that live in the city know. And so it's just part of their norm for them to go through that gender-based violence, the women especially, and so they don't necessarily know that it's something wrong a lot of the times. And that's why my word is educate, because when he mentioned that, I thought about what we're facing here in our country and how some of the people don't necessarily know that they're actually being victims of gender-based violence.
Any responses to that? Because there is a question of the norms that we all take on board. So I've had a long discussion with a male friend of mine whose attitude is that his culture, which is Caribbean and Trinidadian culture, in his culture, nothing is wrong with beating a woman to get her to comply with whatever his wishes are. So it's an issue, and there are women who accept that. So sometimes we need to ask ourselves, what are we really pushing against? Are we pushing against our own interpretations? And if this person accepts it and is comfortable with it, is it wrong? Very, very judgmental kind of statement. But I think the point that we need to take away is we always need to recognize the cultural differences and the cultural context in which things happen, and spend some time just trying to give people another story. And because I'm a TED licensee, there's an excellent talk about the power of a single story that can help us to reframe and rethink some of what we might feel are important. I have some raised hands. Just unmute and go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, I wanted to respond to Denise, what you were saying about norms, because something that I think is relevant to this conversation, and something that I think about a lot, and this has to do with the piece that I'm working on for this biennial, is the fact that at least here in the Bahamas, women are not afforded the same rights as men, or are not afforded certain protections that I feel like we should be afforded. So for example, it's legal here in the Bahamas for a husband to rape his wife. Marital rape is not recognized here. And then on top of that, there are citizenship inequalities that affect women and men. And also, to your point before the break, with regards to like gender violence intersecting with homophobia, when we have tried to have referendums twice now to rectify these unequal citizenship laws, which have to do with like who is allowed to pass their citizenship onto their foreign spouses and foreign-born children. Especially the religious leaders here who have a lot of power will bring up this like homophobic kind of dialogue. So like if we allow for equal rights, then that somehow is going to cause like gay rights, which also like to me is like, and I still don't see the problem, but a lot of folks are like the homophobia is so pervasive that also we won't even entertain this conversation about equal rights in terms of like what we understand as just these two genders, because then there might be like intersectional genders that want rights, and then they also get left out of the conversation in the wording of the law. And I guess the whole point of this is I'm just saying that if we don't recognize women as equal citizens and affording of protection through our laws, that is going to tell us something. Like that's something that we're going to internalize as norms, because then we're lesser citizens and we're not affording of certain protections. And some people are left out of the conversation entirely. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you very much. Jalissa, you want to go ahead?
Sure. I mean, I just want to add to that, especially what I believe David mentioned earlier about education and societal norms. I think it's just really important, and I don't understand why. I understand that it comes from a base level of fear of the unknown, extent, because they don't understand that. I don't understand that people can't see that abuse in any way, shape, or form is not acceptable. You know, and I guess maybe it starts from even from a younger stage, because I know that there are probably some people that are, you know, pro-disciplining their children through hitting and through physical abuse, and that for them is, especially within our culture, is acceptable, because they deem that as a way of making sure that that child complies with what the parent wants. And I don't personally see that as a valuable way of disciplining your child. I've never been beaten, and I like to consider myself to be, you know, a fairly good child growing up. So I don't then, I mean, maybe from that, it then stems into adulthood, and then thinking to yourself that this person isn't doing what I want them to do. Therefore, from how I was raised, if somebody does, you know, is doing something I don't want them to do, my first knee-jerk reaction should be to hit them into submission, you know? And I guess that has to then be a cultural shift. Like, there needs to be a conversation about it, and then people need to be educated as to why this isn't right. This isn't right to do it against kids. It's not right to do it against women. It's not right to do it against anybody, any member of the LGBTQ family. You know, you have to take that acceptance of violence and abuse, chuck it through the window, and then have a discussion about the fact that it should be your right to not live in fear on this planet.
I just want to respond by simply saying that you have an opportunity, and I mean you, the room has an opportunity to impact the changes in subtle ways, because sometimes the full-on frontal, let's do this differently, doesn't always work. So as a part of the work that you do, and as a part of your communication strategy and methods, then you can make a difference. All right, Vanessa, you wanted to say something? I'll take one more comment after Vanessa.
Okay. Well, firstly, I agreed with what Jalissa just said, not in the entirety, because I have known persons that have never been beaten as children, and never had that type of disciplinary actions in their lives, and they have become very abusive men and even abusive women. However, I think the status in society kind of affects where we are in domestic violence, whether it is male or female. The lack of support groups available for well, I wouldn't say women, although most times it's directed to the women. A lack of support group, that too affects the status of domestic violence. Because, for instance, myself, if I'm running away from a home because I'm being beaten and I have to take 4 children with me, and then I go to the Women's Bureau, and the Women's Bureau have no means of sheltering me, they don't have no means of supporting me, because remember, I'm running away, I'm letting go everything that I have, and I'm running away with 4 children, and I'm going to the Women's Bureau, and they do not have a safe home. Sorry about that. they do not have a safe home, right? The welfare division probably may not be able to process me as quick enough to help me financially. And I have these 4 children depending on me. So basically it leaves you in a point, and especially if you don't have the required family support, or the family cannot assist you, your family is not probably capable to assist you as they could or as they would like to. Because I had that experience. And one of the reasons, the only reason that I actually stayed in that situation is because I needed a home for my children. I didn't stay there because I could have fight back. But when I think of it, if I fight back, if I fight back, he's going to apply more pressure, because he is the one that has that level of insecurity and feel that he have that level of control. So in wanting to control me even further, he going to apply, if I try to fight back, he's going to apply more force. Now, he applying more force could end up harming me, where I could end up hospitalized or dead. I fighting back could end up he being hospitalized or dead. And then I have 4 children in the hands of the state. Now, we tend to always, we have to look at the bigger picture. When you think of all those things, and then you think of children that have come from foster homes, and the stories of abuse that they receive, even in the foster homes, even in foster care. And you as a mother, the children is not being physically abused. So sometimes you just have to make that rash decision until you reach a point where, during that point in time, you build up yourself and you try to save and you try to find a way out. And when that time comes, you just move. But sometimes we are at a point where, especially in our society, for some reason, it's easier for a young man to get a loan at the bank to start a business. Right now, I got my home damaged during Maria, and I'm trying to get a loan from the bank, and I'm being looked at as an at-risk client. I'm a high-risk client because why? I'm a single mother of 4, and I'm self-employed. So the bank do not really want to take the level of investment in me that they would take in a gentleman. So that now leaves us women to a point where we are forced to accept certain things for the well-being of our children most times, until we have the capability to be able to get up and move. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing. Dwight?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of jump in. I agree with Vanessa. Sometimes we need to look at the bigger picture. I think I come from a totally different viewpoint than Jalissa. I was beaten as a child, not abused, but in the same token, I have a loving family. I don't abuse my wife. I don't abuse my children. And I see the value that, from the perspective of what my parents was doing. So I think sometimes we, as an artist in this collective group, we're going to have different ideas, different opinions, but at the end of the day, how does this bring, and my word was healing, how does it bring healing? How do we heal? How do we heal from whatever area we're coming from, that we feel that we're broken? I came, like I said, I grew up in a family that was, my dad was in some ways militant. He softened in his older age, but I don't hold him captive based on his stand. I think I turned out wonderful. My wife says so, so my children think so. But at the end of the day, as artists, my word is healing. How do we heal? We're gonna have different views. I don't think we're gonna collectively sit here and 27 of us are gonna agree. We come from different moral positions. We come from different spiritual positions. We have different viewpoints, even as it relates to homosexuality, as it relates to the whole element of marriage and family. But how do we now convey through this element of art a sense of healing? That's my 5 cents.
Thank you for your 5 cents. And I'm just going to take the next 2 comments. Robert, and then Analdo, and then we go to the word cloud that Roxanne will share. So Robert.
Yeah, hi. What do we understand about violence? Violence is coming from, I guess, both sides, male and female, right? Because when we look at a female, she will start to beaten up a man. It's also we also name it as violent. But when police or the government will come and then they do not understand that violence is coming from both sides, right? And nowadays they have women rights in the court where the man has less to say and they barely get help from the court majesty. But that's sometimes sad because they need to listen to both sides. Where does it start? Sometimes the female may start it first, where the aggressiveness of the male, he cannot control himself. So things is getting out of hands. And yes, it's true. We need to appreciate the female because thanks to them we're on Earth, right? We're on Earth and we must place them a certain height. I mean, place in the society. But the main thing is it's love, right? Sometimes without love in a relationship, in a home, what do we get without love, right? Love has nothing to do, has many factors, such as talking to each other, cuddling, talking to each other, and solving problems together. But sometimes it's a big problems. The other party may not get or participate with the problem where it might never be a solution to the problem. And to me, live together as one, I mean, beating up females doesn't bring any solutions. It might make it worse in the sense like you might split up, right? You have children with each other. They might suffer, the children might suffer from the violence. So I don't think for now there would be a problem, a solution. But we have to look at things positive, right? The male should talk to to his wife. The man should talk to his wife, and the woman should talk to her husband. But nowadays, they also have technology. Technology destroys relationships, right? They might use the mobile phone, WhatsApp, talking secretly to the other partner outside. And in a relationship, when you have a third person that's coming in between, the third person is coming, you might expecting trouble, trouble in the relationship. And I don't know how they're gonna survive when they allow the third person to get into their relationship between them.
Robert, I just want to ask you, how would you represent, not how, but would you represent what you're saying via your medium, your preferred medium?
I would use paint, and a mixed media such as sand, wood glue, and shells.
Well, I look forward to seeing that piece.
You're right.
All right. Analdo, just the last comment on this area before we move on.
Thanks for asking me into this. there's a lot that's been said. So I'm just trying to be as concise as I can, just touching on a couple of things. I feel one of the things is like is how support services interact with people when they're experiencing violence, and that there are instances where that can fail people, both in the instance I think where Esther spoke about foster homes and violence being experienced there. So that's one. That's one thing. In a previous session outside of this, Moya had raised what I thought was an important point about, and she was talking about as her role as a teacher and preparing people. And I think one among solutions, like one of the issues I feel like also coming up is how well prepared are people true, in their home environment, but also in schooling, to handle or to have approaches towards these difficult situations. Because I think in part with it being as left out or absent in many education programs, people don't even know where to start if they're either witnessing or experiencing violence or gender-based violence. Which also brings me to thinking about how we help each other with more practical solutions. So in this conversation around like how around obedience and that people can use violence to get permission out to someone, I think there can be a lot of like vagueness or abstractness of like, okay, don't do this, but a lot of people may struggle with what's an alternative to this approach. And so it's positioning, okay, well, what is a healthy alternative to getting either the behavior or learning to accept the behavior? Because I think that's also a viable thing. Just because you dislike something doesn't mean it should be cooked. And adding to that as well, as I said, many things came up, so like also around culture, and that there can be a culture of violence. And certainly I think many of us agree that there is a culture of violence in our region. But that shifting culture thing for many people who are trying to do that, I think it's important for us to remember that it can be time consuming and that it does require dedication. Because there are times that it feels daunting and that it doesn't look as if change is occurring. But being dedicated and I guess finding ways to support your own self-confidence through that journey is important. So I think I'll hold up on the contribution.
Thank you very much, Ronaldo. Roxanne, can we just show up the word cloud?
Sure. I actually put it in the group chat just because I'm mindful of time, but here it is. Are you all seeing it?
Yeah.
So that's a representation of some of the thoughts that we have. And it's interesting that some of the words, for me, some of the words that are there, confuzzled, freedom, honor, pervasive. All right, Roxanne, this is something that I think all of us should focus on at some point as we continue to figure out how do we represent gender-based violence in the work that we do in the various media that we use. All right, I just want to move on to a video that, all right, and here's where my challenges may occur. That's not it. All right, let me go back. Roxanne, it's not happening on my side. Can you? I don't know why. New share. Okay.
It's we're seeing it, right? It's loading. Yes.
It's loading, but it's not.
Okay.
Okay.
Want me to drop it into the drive?
See, because it's taking a long time. You want me to stop my share?
I think we're having a little internet dipping issue.
Okay. So you want me to move on to something else?
Yes, I will queue it up. Keep going and I'll queue it up so that maybe we can show it as the last page. Is it the digs one you want to show?
It's the, yeah.
Or the Jackson Cats?
Sanford Biggers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so you're going to queue up that.
I'll queue it up.
All right. Sorry about that. I just want to go through, these are basics. Just have a look at what violence is. It's an extreme form of aggression, and this is just a Merriam-Webster definition. And here's another definition, but this is a UNHCR definition of gender-based violence. And we're looking at things like how it is harmful, who it is directed to, what it is based on, and really that it is based on inequity and the abuse of power. And inequity in the Caribbean is an issue that will continue to haunt us for quite a long time. There are two other concepts we need to be looking at.
Denise, do you want to share your screen?
Oh, you mean all that time I was talking to myself?
No, where? You where?
I'm on share screen now?
Yes.
You seeing it now?
Yes, you are. Yes.
Oh, fine. So the two other concepts that we needed to look at is the concept of statelessness. And this is happening quite a lot in the Caribbean. Well, certainly a lot of Trinidadians are at the moment stateless because of COVID. And the statelessness is not only as a result of COVID. We have statelessness because of illegal migration. And those are all issues that we need to be considering when we are creating our pieces, and consider clearly that everyone has a right to belong, somewhere. And we need to make sure that the violence doesn't prevent people from belonging and being part of whatever it is. And the final thing that I want us to figure out, and this is your homework, is what is your impact? What is my impact on all of these things? What is my impact on gender-based violence, on violence in particular, on statelessness, on seclusion? Those are issues that I hope will inform some of what you do, so that the pieces that you create will speak in our voice and speak in our voice of authenticity. All right, Roxanne, are we able to show that video? No answer, all right.
So it is giving trouble. It is not opening at all.
Okay, so let's then go to the final poll that we wanted to do. Stop my
Yes, I'll open this. Yes, you'll see that you're seeing the second poll queued up.
I try again the second poll. All right, so we ready with that, Paul?
The rain and the ash has brought us technology problems. This is the first time we're having this kind of issues. Let's see.
So is it that it is just, it seems to be just buffering for a long time.
Okay. Chat a little bit.
All right, I'm going to put the video that I wanted us to look at. I'm going to put that in the chat so that we can look at it on our own time. It's such a brilliant video. All right, any questions or comments? All right, so I have put the video in the chat. So that's your second bit of homework. Apart from asking yourself, what is your impact, and figuring out your own impact, you have some homework to do there. Any comments on what we've done so far?
Just wondered if anybody else in the stream could quickly share the video.
I mean, if it's not coming up for us. Someone had put in the chat that the conversation was problematic. And I wanted to know if we can have some discussion about what was that and how could we work through what are some of those problems? Because if as artists and creatives, we're not able to articulate some of these issues, we're not going to be able to communicate them in a voice that is authentic. Roxanne, we're not getting volume at all.
In 2007, I created slogans. Regardless of the format, two of my favorite materials are history and dialogue.
Are you hearing it?
In 2007,
yes. Are you seeing everything?
A 7.5
Yes. Okay.
600-pound glass depiction of a lotus blossom. In Buddhism, the lotus is a symbol for transcendence and for purity of mind and spirit. But a closer look at this lotus reveals each petal to be the cross-section of a slave ship. This iconic diagram was taken from a British slaving manual and later used by abolitionists to show the atrocities of slavery. In America, we don't like to talk about slavery, nor do we look at it as a global industry. But by using this Buddhist symbol, I hope to universalize and transcend the history and trauma of Black America and encourage discussions about our shared past. To create Lotus, we carved over 6,000 figures. And this later led to a commission by the city of New York to create a 28-foot version in steel as a permanent installation at the Eagle Academy for Young Men, a school for Black and Latino students, the two groups most affected by this history. The same two groups are very affected by a more recent phenomenon, but let me digress. I've been collecting wooden African figures from tourist shops and flea markets around the world. The authenticity and origin of them is completely debatable, but people believe these to be imbued with power or even magic. Only recently have I figured out how to use this in my own work. Since 2012, the world has witnessed the killings of Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Eric Garner, Sandra Bland, Tamir Rice, and literally countless other unarmed Black citizens at the hands of the police, who frequently walk away with no punishment at all. In consideration of these victims, and the several times that even I, a law-abiding Ivy League professor, have been targeted and harassed at gunpoint by the police, I created this body of work simply entitled BAM. It was important to erase the identity of each of these figures, to make them all look the same and easier to disregard. To do this, I dipped them in a thick brown wax before taking them to a shooting range where I re-sculpted them using bullets. And it was fun, playing with big guns and high-speed video cameras, but my reverence for these figures kept me from actually pulling the trigger, somehow feeling as if I would be shooting myself. Finally, my cameraman, Raul, fired the shots. I then took the fragments of these and created molds and cast them first in wax, finally in bronze, like the image you see here, which bears the marks of its violent creation, like battle wounds or scars. When I showed this work recently in Miami, a woman told me she felt every gunshot to her soul, but she also felt that these artworks memorialize the victims of these killings, as well as other victims of racial violence throughout US history. But Lotus and BAM are larger than just US history. While showing in Berlin last year, a philosophy student asked me what prompted these recent killings. I showed him a photo of a lynching postcard from the early 1900s and reminded him that these killings have been going on for over 500 years. But it's only through questions like his and more thoughtful dialogue about history and race can we evolve as individuals and as society. I hope my artwork creates a safe space for this type of honest exchange and an opportunity for people to engage one another in real and necessary conversation. Thank you.
Can I just get some words popped into the chat as your reactions? And if there are any persons who want to make a comment on it, please do so. Any new voices? All right.
I think one thing, my thought isn't fully, this has been a very deep, heavy session, okay? I think two things that stood out to me for discussions were control and communication. And I think of the many wonderful and groundbreaking futures that we should change ourselves of because of our violence, and whether that means people having to leave our countries, people just dimming people's light, dimming their spirits. I'm just think of how, like, you know, we often talk about the greater powers and how they extract and take from us, but we are unable to see how much we take from ourselves by how violent we are with each other and how black and white we are with each other. So it's just interesting to me that we don't see how we harm ourselves by this very militant, colonialist, you know, history that we all have of being so exacting with each other, and how we hurt ourselves, I think, is my thought today.
Thank you. Just unmute and go ahead.
Okay, something he said was kind of something I wanted to say earlier, because going back, back into biblical, sorry, I don't know how, but anyway, Jesus said that one of the most important things is loving somebody as much as you love yourself. And what got to me in his talk was the fact that he didn't want to pull the trigger on himself. So that respect that you have for yourself, there are some psychological conditions where people pinch themselves, they cut themselves. But in most instances, whether it's a child, whether it's a baby, whether the person is homosexual, respecting somebody else the same way you love yourself, I think that is so important. And will you hurt yourself? Will you say, sometimes we do say negative things about our own self, but yet you're not gonna, if you think about how you feel and thinking about hurting somebody and how you would feel if it happened to you, I feel like a lot of these things would be avoided. So when he talked about not shooting and then the cameraman shot, that brought home to me that one scripture where he says about loving others more than you love yours, loving the way you love yourself, to love somebody else. So that's it.
Thank you very much, Moya. Christopher, quick comment.
Yes, I am saying this is coming from an informed perspective as an educator, maybe even a professor is thinking out of the box. But what do you leave for the person who is not even thinking beyond that extreme? So when I tie that into gender-based violence and mental health, no way you're getting someone who has not reached to his level to think like that. So while it is very fruitful and informative, I am saying the actual victims never reach that peak that he has attained to critically assess the trauma that they are facing.
I just want, Christopher, which is why my prayer, my wish is that as a result of this session, your work will be in a voice that could communicate to our people, because that to me is the critical issue. How do we communicate as Caribbean people in an authentic voice? I know that life evolves and things change, but everybody who has a space to communicate, every artist, and I feel that we are all artists, you don't have to paint or whatever, I think we're all artists. We all have to find that authenticity and find that voice to be able to spread whatever the messages are. And that voice to reduce the violence that we see around us, that is an extremely important voice for all of us.
That's what I do. Thanks. That's what I do. I use the, let me just continue. Sorry, finally. That's why I use playwriting, theater, drama, and film to express. And these are the voices that are stifled. And when the art is most powerful, I use this medium to evolve and explode the authentic voice.
Lovely. All right. While Roxanne, are we able to do that second poll?
Yes, ready. I can launch it now.
Please, let's launch that poll, and that will be our end activity.
Are you all seeing it?
I'm seeing it, I don't know. But nobody has voted. We're still at 0. Okay.
And Denise, I actually edited the response elements for that what's your medium question.
Yes,
so if we can take that one time after this one, just to get the responses, please.
Yeah, so we'll do another poll on the medium.
Yes, just to get the responses.
Yeah. We are at 91%.
Thank you. I can end because I think that last person might have been you, Denise.
Okay, so end the poll.
Thank you so much.
The other one. And while we're doing that, it's 2 minutes to 12. I just want to thank each person on this call for being present. And I really pray that the future, we will be able to be authentic and speak in the voices of our Caribbean-ness, so that we continue to shine in the world. And more importantly for me is that some of us need to shine where we have been put down, and we've been put down at various places in the Caribbean. So I want to see a lot more of us work for us, by us, and if possible, here.
Denise, are you seeing the results?
I am seeing the results. Yes, yes, I am. We're all seeing the results. Lovely. All right, I am happy with the results. So I want to thank you very much, and I'll hand over to Roxanne just to wrap up what we've been doing. Thank you ever so much for a wonderful morning, and I hope it has made a difference to your lives.
Wow, excellent. Thank you, Denise. You know, the thought-provoking nature of this session, I know it can be, you know, and some of the comments, you know, the profound, powerful, looking at the video, people's responses, you know, it is, and yes, this is a safe space for us to discuss these kinds of things. This is a safe moment where we can share our thoughts, share ideas, but ultimately produce a piece from each of you that has a lot of these elements interwoven into it. And it's fine, you know, whichever way you land, if you're using your sculpture, your art, your writing, it's fine to be able to, and it's fine what you decide to showcase, right? What elements you decide to show. We are excited about this moment. We're excited about the opportunity that we have right now, right? To get your feedback, to get you thinking. Yes, very emotional session, inspiring. It has made a difference. Thank you guys for your willingness to be so open, so raw, so to experience this thing. So we are 22 out of 24, and I'm going to end that poll. Thank you guys. We go in tomorrow, tomorrow's session. We go from 10:30, not 10:30 until about 12:30, right? And we're going to be looking at this topic again, just so that we get a different perspective. Our speaker for tomorrow is going to be Tony-Ann, she's out of Barbados, the PAHO, the UN Women's Organization. So we're excited to see what happens next. Well, I would love to create a little word cloud in terms of your thoughts on this word that we've thrown at you, the statelessness. You know, a one word, what does it mean to you? You know, what is it kind of, you know, what word kind of pulls the essence of it all for you? So we'll grab that tomorrow. Thank you, guys. If there aren't any questions, any concerns, please let me know. And we're looking at, yes?
Yes, ma'am. Do you have the results for the poll that you just took with our art form?
Sure, you can see them.
I just shared it, Roxanne.
Oh, sorry. Good. It's up?
Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to connect with the people that are in the field of animation. That's why I wanted to see how many other people. So if anybody else is if they could drop their, I don't know how we could share contact information in terms of that. Or if you have that information.
Yes, we have it. So it's David, it's Precious, Joel Barrow is also in animation. And Jalissa, is it Jalissa? Jalissa is an illustrator.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you, guys. Now please make outreach to Mr. Roberts. You know, if you haven't done so already, he is ready, willing to hear what your projects are and to see how he can influence or contribute to your thinking. So please, you should have his contact. I'll drop it back in to the area here, but we are looking at doing possibly a session on Thursday with the Bahamian group. That's Thursday afternoon, but in the morning, you can have access to Mr. Roberts from 10 a.m. as well as on Friday, you can also have access to him. And then he's very, very open to, you know, one-on-one chats with you. I've just put his contact in the chat. Please grab it out right, and make contact with him.
Roxanne, I have a quick question or maybe even request. I haven't seen everyone sort of contact, meaning an email that has gone on to all of us. And I asked that just so that we could have each other's contact so we could like email or be in touch, because I've only received email from Anime Caribbean. I know the contact information for no one else, and it would be good if we could email each other or just have each other's contact. The email is fine.
I can say that in an informal way, you all are open to do that. I will have to just double check if I can share people's, contact information like that. I'll have to double check with CDB. So no problem. You'll have it before we end. We'll see. You'll have a response before we, end it all.
Thank you very much.
But certainly you are welcome and open to starting up a group, starting up, WhatsApp group. Add me for a little bit just so that we can, keep things going. Very good. Well, thanks a lot, guys. See you tomorrow morning. Mrs. Deming, thank you so much for your session.
Can I stay on to chat with you, Roxanne?
Of course. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. All right, guys. Well, have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Grab the contact information for Antonius out of the chat, and we go from there. Take care. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Au revoir. Au revoir.
Au revoir. Stay safe,
Bye. Have a good
everyone.
one,
Stay
guys.
safe.
Bye.